Welcome, everyone. I'm Linda Silver. I'm the Eugene McDermott CEO here at the Perot Museum of Nature and Science, and I'm absolutely delighted that we'll be able to provide the host location for tonight's Compass School of Texas Fireside Chat. And I'm especially honored to host Ross Perot Jr. at the museum that proudly bears his family's name. The Perot family recognized long ago the importance of having a science museum in Dallas that could deliver a world-class experience to millions. And we're grateful for his and his family's inspiration and support, so thank you, Ross. I hope that most of you have had a chance to visit the Perot Museum before, especially given how our mission to inspire minds through nature and science complements the work of Compass School so perfectly. Informal learning, the kind that the Perot Museum has brought to millions throughout our community since we opened in December of 2012, is a vital partner to formal classroom learning, and it leads to vastly better student outcomes when we pair informal and formal together. When students who might initially be intimidated by STEM come to the Perot, they can immerse themselves in a fun, pressure-free environment and experience our exhibits and our programs at their own pace. While this is true for learners of all ages, and believe me, we work hard to ensure that no matter what your age, you'll come and be inspired, it is especially true for our youngest learners. And it was these youngest learners that we had in mind when we set about to expand and modernize our Moody Family Children's Museum, which is located on our lower level. It will be reopening on Memorial Day weekend and was a tremendous labor of love that will nearly double the size of the Perot Museum's original children's museum while adopting the latest approach to early informal education. Being able to explore and experiment without risk of getting it wrong is a critical part of inspiring and nurturing curiosity, and the new Children's Museum strives to do just that. There's no right way or wrong way to engage with the many new interactive exhibitions that you'll see in the Moody Family Children's Center. And in fact, as we were developing the exhibition, our own eyes were opened as we saw children engage in ways that we hadn't even imagined, let alone predicted. And that's really the point, isn't it? Ages 0 to 7, it's such a critical time for brain development, and it's important that we nurture it while not being overly prescriptive. We're excited for Dallas's new Children's Museum to open next month. It's actually 3.5 weeks from today. And I hope that you will all come back and check it out for yourselves. And again, thank you for being at the Perot Museum tonight.
Good evening. Thank you for being here. My name's Katie Doherty. I'm the Director of Advancement for Compass, and we're so excited to get this evening started. At Compass, we're committed to creating opportunities for lifelong learning through the transformative power of education. Tonight, we're so grateful for our presenting sponsor, the Mitchell Group, Francis and Noah Mitchell, as well as Francis Harrison and Manuel Brito, Benchmark Bank. We have Jimmy and Kathy Ball with us, Eamon and Allison Austin, and of course, Galley's Wine and Spirits for the beverages you're enjoying. And thank you again to the Perot and Dr. Silver for hosting us. We, since opening in August of 23, we started with 43 students. We currently have 63 students enrolled, and I'm very proud to announce that we have over 100 students enrolled for the fall for pre-K through 4th grade. So. We are meeting the growing demand for exceptional education in Dallas. Exciting. And the campus expansion is a bold investment in the future of education, not just in our city, but in our world. And together we can create a lasting impact by supporting a school that prepares students not to only lead with purpose, but to lead with integrity. So tonight's conversation, our Leadership Fireside Chat, hopefully it will inspire you to reflect on your own potential to lead and shape the future for generations to come. I'm very honored to introduce our moderator, Peter Brundage, who is Senior Managing Director at Evercore, proud grandparent at the Compass School of Texas, and the Compass True North Capital Campaign Chair. Peter?
Katie, thank you. Thank you all for being here and supporting Compass School. And thank you to the two panelists for agreeing to join us. As you're going to hear, we truly have two extraordinary leaders. I'm going to try to give you a little bit of background. It was very hard to summarize it, quite frankly. But I think it'll help frame the Q&A that we're going to go through. And by the way, I'm going to save time, so please, prepare questions. I'm sure Ross and Admiral Walsh would be more than happy. But let me start with the introduction for Admiral Walsh. First of all, he's a graduate locally of Jesuit. When he graduated from Jesuit, he's one of two students in the school history that's ever been granted both the Distinguished Graduate and the Distinguished Alumnus Award. He went and enrolled in the Naval Academy after successful tour through the Naval Academy, went into the Navy, became a naval aviator, and at least I was very impressed. He flew in the Blue Angels, which tells you a little bit of something. I think most of you have probably seen that. In the interim, held positions all over the world as he continued to rise through the ranks, reaching the rank of 4-star admiral in the United States Navy. When he retired, he was the 59th commander of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, which is the largest naval force in the world. Somewhere along the way, he decided he also wanted to get a master's degree. So he wanted to study international relations, went to the Fletcher School at Tufts, a very top school, where you can probably already figure out, yes, he graduated first in his class from Tufts. But not being satisfied with just a 34-year terrific, distinguished career in the serving his country, went on and embarked in a very successful business, philanthropic, and civic career. And it's now resulted in Pat serving as the president of the Cristo Rey School in Dallas, which many of you will be familiar with. It serves South Dallas. This is all lower-income students. And I think, as he'd be proud to tell you, I think it's really, he was sharing this with Ross and me earlier, stunning. All of the graduates this year already had been accepted in colleges as of February of this year. And coming from that area, just a stunning achievement.
Yeah.
Stunning achievement.
Yeah. Thanks, Peter.
Pleasure. Let me turn to Ross. Probably doesn't need a lot of introduction, but I'm going to have too much fun doing it anyway. So suffice it to say, Ross and his family have truly transformed the landscape in Dallas in so many ways. We can look around at this phenomenal museum that we're all sitting in, but you look at so many of the other things, whether you go over to Southwestern Medical, and all throughout that campus, the Perot family has helped Southwestern become the phenomenal medical institution that it is. Or you go out to the Alliance Airport, and the development around there. To give you an idea of the impact that's had, I looked it up, and I think the estimate on it was, I think it's created 66,000 incremental new jobs out there, and $130 billion economic impact just at the Alliance Airport, to give you an idea of just how impactful it's been. But I'd also share with you just what's happened in the last few weeks, because if I went back much beyond that, we wouldn't have time for the Q&A. But in the last week, Ross was honored with the Fire the Gut Award. That is the U.S. Navy SEAL Foundation award for the support of nation's heroes and leadership in supporting the U.S. military. Also, somehow in the same week, he was elected to the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. And this, of course, as many of you know, honors excellence and convenes leaders from all fields across arts and sciences. Having spent time at university, you will know a professor that is awarded entrance into the academy often views it as the peak of their career. So quite an achievement. Recently, I'm sure you saw in the paper, Ross was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award from NASDAQ And then if I went back all the way to the end of last year, he was also honored by the Manhattan Institute with the Alexander Hamilton Award, which honors individuals helping to foster the revitalization of our cities. That's over 3 months. What I didn't have in there that I learned today, he is also the incoming chairman of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. I'm sure someone's going to want to know, how do you possibly do all this? But as you know, Ross had a tremendous career across business. It's included oil and gas, it's real estate, started a highly successful tech company that got sold. It just goes on and on. And so the impact, both business, civic, philanthropy, really exciting and groundbreaking, both Dallas, Texas, and the United States. But one more point I know he'd want me to make is he is a passionate aviator, much like Pat. And one feat I had to note was quite a long time ago, Ross actually set the world record for the first helicopter flight around the world in less than 30 days. So quite a feat, and as I understand, it still flies regularly. So as you can tell, we've got two extraordinary leaders here to join us. So thank you both.
Peter, thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
So just to kick it off, Pat, maybe I'll turn to you first. You've had numerous positions in the military, subsequently business, now at Cristo Rey. Maybe you could share some thoughts about, first of all, what leadership means to you, and maybe a little bit of color about how you developed those skills over time. What helped you get there?
Thanks, Peter. Let me just start with a little bit of family background to let you know how I get here and the interest that I have in the role education plays in the development of young people's lives. So I'm the oldest of six, grew up on Walnut Hill Lane. Dad worked at Jesuit, but we couldn't afford to go to Jesuit. He was on a high school teacher's salary, which in the 60s was like $2,900 a year. And the school had incentives for faculty to bring their own kids to school. That's how I got to Jesuit. Because I was at Jesuit, I was able to compete for an appointment to Annapolis. From Annapolis, then to flight school, 2 graduate degrees and a PhD. All of that opportunity, all of those conversations, and all the mentoring and coaching that goes on by teachers in the classroom who help students expand their horizons and understand what the future could be for them, all of that was made possible by somebody I never met. It was afforded either through tax dollars or through incentives provided by someone else who saw the value in my education but never met me and I never met them. So when the opportunity came up to go to Pleasant Grove and to be part of that, I saw that as a natural extension of what I was given, but also to the question that's raised, this is the role of leadership. So we have all of these sort of life experiences, and unless you want to just sit back and look at it on a wall or in a scrapbook, daily you have an opportunity to apply it. And it's sharing the gift of your life lessons in a way that helped someone else grow.
Great, thank you. Ross, turning to you, you've been around a lot of great leaders in your life, probably including your dad.
Right, of course.
Good place to start. Maybe share a little bit about what leadership means to you, and what makes an effective leader.
I think leadership, as you said, I've been very fortunate. I grew up with a really good leader. And if you look at how I grew up, watching my father, and I watched him build EDS, and I saw the leadership out of EDS, but what I really learned out of EDS was as he built EDS, he recruited basically men and women from the Vietnam War. And he wanted warriors to come into the company because he said, if you're like Admiral Walsh is one of the nation's great leaders. And in my world, I've always looked up to the admirals and our military leaders as the best role models. And so in Vietnam, my father said, look, I want great leaders. They learn that in the military. I'll teach them technology. And so at EDS, it was loaded with these great leaders, and he taught them technology. And so as we grew, every time we want a new account, you put a great leader on it. And if you had the right leader, you didn't have to worry about that account. And so I think I grew up with military leaders, and that's why I think I was so close to the military, wanted to be in the military. And even today, we hire lots of ex-military to be inside our companies because they know how to be great leaders. And so the military teaches great leadership, and there are many ways to learn great leadership in the civilian world, and it gets down to your teachers and your coaches. Arnie Holberg is one of the great leaders of St. Mark's, and I spent decades with Arnie at St. Mark's, and Arnie basically was headmaster when my two boys went through St. Mark's. So with Arnie and Jan, I owe you both a lot for what you taught my sons and my nephews. So we're surrounded by great leaders. And the key with leadership, at the end of the day, it's integrity. You have to have leaders of great integrity. And that's what you learn in the military, because the military wouldn't tolerate anybody that wasn't honest. And quickly you get weeded out of the military. In the civilian world, it's the same thing. It's going to be integrity, and it starts with integrity.
Peter, got to follow up on that. So let me talk to you about Ross's dad.
Perfect.
A sad story, but a true story and an amazing story about Ross Sr. My mother gets diagnosed with inoperable brain cancer, and we are at Zale Lipsche. We are in a scrum, all 6 of us, in terms of brothers and sisters and my dad, as we realize when the doctor comes out, nothing's going to work for her. Elevator door opens up. Out comes Ross Perot. Doesn't know us, walks into the middle of the scrum and says, "What's going on?" And you can do it with the accent better than I can. And then he says, "Here's what we're going to do." And he said, "When your mom's well enough to travel, we're going to send for her with my car, put her on my plane, take her down to MD Anderson. We'll have the best doctors in the world look at her. And if they can do anything, they will." And then he said, "Whatever you do, just don't tell anybody." So I'm here telling everybody.
Statute of limitations is up. That's it.
And in years gone by, what I realized is how many times that story played out for someone else. So you talk about leadership. There's an element of capacity that is just never exceeded. True leaders always find capacity to deal with whatever it is that's on your mind. And you will never know what's on their mind, what's on their schedule, what they're having to rearrange and reprioritize, because they're making time for you. They're listening to you. And as we walk away from tonight, I want people to remember with real vignettes and stories that true leaders are generous people at heart. And what they've done for veterans at EDS is they took a chance on them. When others would look at them and go, "Yeah, you're kind of a one-trick pony. You were in uniform. You can't really do much else." Not Ross Sr., not EDS, not that team. They said, "No, we see the value of what the country has already invested in you, and we want you on our team." It's powerful. Worked well.
With the caring part,
Yeah.
a true leader cares. And my father, what he did for your admiral, he did for lots of people. And he really cared about the men and women in the military. And the number of people he'd help constantly was something that we all grew up with, and we continue to try to copy today inside our companies. And to watch my father go off to help the POWs in Vietnam, and because the POWs have been forgotten in Vietnam, and the North Vietnamese would tell our POWs, "Nobody cares about you. You're left over here." And a lot of the families didn't know if their husbands or sons or brothers were alive or dead. And the wives came to see my father. My father worked with Nixon and Kissinger, and he said, "Look, we're going to put global attention on these POWs, and we're going to let the Vietnamese know that the American people love these men, and we care for these men, and we want them back." And with that PR effort, he put a huge amount of attention on the Vietnamese. And the Vietnamese made terrible PR mistakes. And number one, he had basically food, medicine, and letters for the prisoners of war. He flew them into South Vietnam with all the media watching. Over Christmas, he said, "I want to deliver these to the POWs." And the North Vietnamese made the mistake of saying, "Not letting them in." So all of a sudden, a black and white mistake, what do you mean you're not going to let them in? Well, because of that effort, they pulled the POWs together, they allowed the Vietnamese to write home, or the Americans to write home, and so we knew who was alive, who wasn't alive, and that's what really changed the course of my family's history, because it plugged us in deep into the U.S. military, and we saw, the finest men and women this nation produces coming out of the military. And I also think your Naval Academy background helped. My dad was in Naval Academy, so there's a soft spot for Academy grads.
Maybe I could stick with the military theme for just one more question, Pat. The military academies are renowned for producing very strong, very effective leaders. I guess one question, how do they do it, and what can we all learn from that?
I had a tour back at Annapolis as the chairman for the Department of Leadership, Ethics, and Law at a time where we couldn't get off the front page because everything that was going wrong had something to do with leadership, ethics, and law. So I got the question, well, what are you teaching them? And what that prompted was the introduction of an ethics course that allowed us to think of ourselves as a graduate school because we hire all of our students, which means we can predict in advance the kind of dilemma paradigms they're faced with and immerse them in an environment where it's not to find a prescription answer. It's to find an answer that's based on ethics and moral reasoning, an answer that's grounded in terms of how you work through life's challenges, and an answer that can withstand the scrutiny of peer review. That's kind of the way we approached it. It's often referred to as a leadership laboratory. It's a rehearsal in many respects of what it means in order to walk into a room of people you've never met before. And rather than trying to get everyone to conform to a certain sort of style of leadership and management, it's more along the lines of reversing where the real pressure is, which is on the leader, to understand the talent that that person needs to unlock, and to find a way where we understand the value of the people who are here in front of us, rather than just simply assuming that we can bark orders and just recite sort of narratives and requirements, and that everyone's going to simply conform to it. You mentioned I had an opportunity to fly with the Blue Angels. That happens after about 7 or 8 years of experience in the fleet. It's one thing to get ourselves to a place where we can fly with that kind of discipline for that period of time. It's another thing entirely to get 6 people to do it all at once over the course of the 11 months or so that we fly during a year. And that sort of secret, I think, begins with recognizing the power and the value and the contribution that individuals make. And then it's more about the leader coming to the team and understanding what the leader needs to do in order to bring the team together, rather than assuming the team will come to the leader and sort of conform to the needs of the leader.
Terrific. So, Ross, turning to what you do every day at Perot Companies, at Hillwood, the civic activities, the charitable organizations that you've worked with, I'm sure you're constantly thinking about how do you develop leaders. You won't be there forever. You need to make sure these organizations have leaders that can assure sustainability and success into the future. What do you do on a daily basis when you're thinking about how you build that next generation of leaders?
Well, it's a really good question. I'll answer it in a minute, but I think when you listen to Admiral Walsh, what he talked, his leadership lessons are life and death lessons. You make a mistake on the Blue Angels, someone gets killed. You send a man or woman into combat, they might not come home. So these are extraordinarily difficult leadership lessons that very few of us in the civilian world are ever going to match. And so that's why I think the military gives you such a unique opportunity to learn how real leadership. And growing up, as again, I'm surrounded by all these Vietnam veterans, and one day I was complaining, life is tough, and this Marine looked at me and goes, Ross, there's no one shooting at you. You are not going to have a bad day. True. And I go, that isn't a bad way to look at it. No one's going to shoot at me. And he was a Vietnam veteran, highly decorated Vietnam. And I go, not a bad lesson for a young guy to learn about leadership. In your day-to-day civilian, I think because you've got civilian leadership, which is quite a bit different than military leadership. So in the civilian world, we're not life and death is not the key issue. Leading soldiers into combat is not the issue. And so the issue is integrity. You've got to find young leaders with great integrity. And then obviously you've got to have great skills and ability. And then in our world, we love to throw our young talent in over their head and say good luck. Now, if that doesn't work, you might lose money on a deal. Now, in the military, somebody could die. So it's a whole different scenario. But in our world, we'll give our great leaders, our young potential leaders, projects, programs, leave them alone. And if they're smart, they'll come in and say, hey, can you help me? And we're always going to help them. But if they're not that smart, they'll try to do it on their own, and you watch them fail. And we don't let them fail too hard. We'll grab them and say, no, wait, but that isn't going to work. So we'll pull you back and try to teach. But and also with your young leaders, you spend a lot of time with them. You have very open communication with them. And back to leadership, the young leaders know that we, the senior leaders, care about them. We care about them and their families and their success. And we know it's more than just business, black and white. It's your whole family. And as the Admiral mentioned, our culture is if somebody gets sick, we're going to find the best doctors. And we don't care what it costs. We don't care if it's not in a health plan. We don't get into all that. If your child is sick, you're going to get the best we can find to take care of that child. And when you take care of people that way and their children that way, you've got partners for life. And the top deck of our companies have been with us 35 and 40 years. And that's the kind of culture that we have. And it also attracts a certain kind of person. And the type of people that are attracted to our companies, they want that high achievement. They want to be in an operation that cares. They want to be challenged. And that's what we give them. And then in our culture, if you do well financially, you're going to do very, very well.
That's great. Pat, if you had to think about a leadership decision that was particularly impactful, can you share that with us and how it worked out? And the converse to that question, I also want to ask you, what's the worst decision you made? And what did you learn as a result of it?
Yeah, I think the scenario that comes to mind was and this is a decision that whether it was the best or the worst, others will grade me on it, but it was the U.S. response to the Great Eastern Japan earthquake, tsunami, and radiation triple disaster. So for context, March 11, 2011 is what the Japanese refer to as their 3/11 to our 9/11. When the earthquake first hit, I was in Honolulu, and we were looking at seismograph data. We thought there was something wrong with the technology because anything over an 8.3 magnitude earthquake is a 1,000-year event. This was 9.1. This affects the tilt of the Earth's axis. It physically moved Japan 7 feet. And because Japan is the most instrumented country in the world, we know where and when this took place. It's 2:46 in the afternoon. It's 65 miles off the coast of Sendai. It's the Eurasian and Pacific plate at a depth of about 22,000 feet. Displaces 10 billion tons of water, which moves at the speed of a jet, and it hits Sendai with a wave of about 133 feet. That reaches 6.5 miles inland, destroys 400,000 homes, takes 20,000 lives, and then, like an egg beater, pulls everything within its reach out to sea. And so what you see is super tankers on top of buildings, and you see homes and cars and buses and trains taken out to sea. And that's not the worst. So then that knocks out primary, secondary, tertiary power to Fukushima power plant, which then creates a chemical reaction that results in a meltdown in reactors 1, 2, and 3, explosions, chemical explosions that release radiation into the atmosphere, into the ground water supply, food supply, tracked in vehicles all around Japan. we're contemplating the evacuation of Japan. And the arrival there, greeted by Japanese media, Japanese self-defense force, Japanese ministries, the realization that we needed the best answers that the world could offer, rather than the typical sorts of arrangements, which seem very narrow and incomplete by any measure when we arrived. So we had to reorient the way we think in terms of typical vertical relationships to something that were much more horizontal, that were unified in effort rather than in command, and recognize that there were non-governmental organizations from around the world that were anxious to participate. As I stood in front of the Japanese media, it became very clear to me, as far as leadership was concerned, that they didn't expect me to have all the answers. In fact, they appreciated that I didn't have all the answers. And instead, what they wanted more than anything else was for me to stand there with them and not leave. That was heart-wrenching in many respects, and at the same time, the realization that what people need more than anything else is not something that reaches so high and goes so far. Sometimes it is that person-to-person connection, which means so much more and has so much more impact. I will never forget with visiting the Japanese who had moved into elementary schools, and those elementary schools became home for so many families, where to get into the classroom, all the shoes were neatly aligned outside the classroom door. And we had to be invited in, and a grandmother who bowed, took my hand, and wouldn't let go and wept. And she just wanted to hold on to someone who was alive because she had lost everything. It was clear that she was going to work for the rest of her life in order to be able to provide for her grandchildren. And as I look back on that experience, the role that a leader plays is far more than just simply being the figurehead, being the person at the microphone. It has to be someone who connects, someone who realizes what the audience is going through. And in so many respects, we often come in and transmit without really listening to what's really on people's minds. And we tell them what we want to tell them rather than listening to them and then telling them what they need to hear.
Fabulous. Ties in well with, Ross, your comments about part of building an organization is just showing people how much you care.
And think of the impact of U.S.-Japanese relations, because to have you there showing the Japanese people how much the American people care about you is the most invaluable relationship building we can possibly have. And that's why I think as you go around the world, we have a State Department, we have ambassadors, but I think the real ambassadors for America are the generals and the admirals in the military, and your relationships around the world and your ability to deliver aid and care around the world for all these disasters really makes this nation special.
Thank you, Ross. The amazing part is we can do incredible things in crisis. It's the day-to-day routine where we fumble, where we have our biggest problems.
Well, we're human then, but in the crisis, we do great.
Ross, let me ask you another question. You've been so involved in the business side, civic side, philanthropic side, and you continue to be so active in all those areas. What is it that motivates you, that keeps you going, keeps you doing this, when it's clearly something you don't have to be doing this?
It's how I was raised. I mean, we all go back to our parents. And, I watched my mom and dad and what they did. It's very easy I've got four younger sisters. All five of us saw, what these great role models were and how much we love to help our city. I love our country. I love Texas, and I really like Dallas-Fort Worth. And if you look at where we focus so much time, it's on Dallas-Fort Worth. And Linda, running the Perot Museum, is a critical part of our family. And we're in the Perot Museum tonight because my mother basically heard about this museum And so we took her down to Houston to see the Houston Museum of Nature and Science. And my mother was a school teacher. And she was a school teacher at Green Hill. And my big joke is, Mom, thanks for sending me to St. Mark's, because I could have ended up at Green Hill. But she was a school teacher, and she saw all the school buses lined up at the Houston Museum of Nature and Science. And I'm walking in the door, and she looked at me, she goes, I want to do this. And so Forrest Hoagland was raising the money, and Forrest is a great fundraiser. Of course, I couldn't tell Forrest at that moment, the deal was done. But in my family, rarely does my mother say we're going to do something. But she said, we're going to do this. And so I went to Dad, and he said, well, not a whole lot I can say. And so that's why my sisters and I made the gift in honor of my mom and Dad for the Perot Museum, because we love our city. And if you go back, this is an incredible community. And I look at the men and women in the room tonight, and why you're here, and why you're helping Compass School, and why you're helping your children. We all have that same deep feeling. We want to make society better. And we all know life isn't about yourself. It's about others, and it's about giving, and it's about taking care of people, and it's about making your city, your state, your country, the world a better place to live for your children. And now that I'm a grandfather, all of a sudden it's like, wow, I've got to make sure my granddaughter also has a great city, state, and country to grow up in. So that's why you do it. And this city has been so good to my family that we're never not going to work for Dallas-Fort Worth, or we're never not going to try to help make this city better. And literally, my parents drove to Dallas in 1956 with all their possessions in the trunk of their car, and they didn't know anybody. My dad was a salesman for IBM, and we lived the American dream in Dallas-Fort Worth. And this city embraced my parents and embraced my family, and we'll never be able to do enough to thank the citizens in North Texas for this great community. And that's why we do it, Peter. We love it, enjoy it, and again, everybody in this room understands the joy and the benefit you get out of helping other people.
We've got a few more minutes. We've got two extraordinary leaders here. Questions from the audience?
Please.
Ross, before you become a leader, developed as a leader in your organization, you first have to be hired by your organization. I know you set the parameters.
Malone, thank you. Great question. How do you hire at a Perot company?
Maybe a couple of those in an absolute cut or two, something you see that says you're not.
Well, integrity is always the first. And Darcy Anderson, is the vice chairman of Hillwood, interviews everybody that comes in to the firm. And Darcy's West Point came to us, has 5 years at the Army, then came to us back in the EDS days. And so no one knows the Perot culture better than Darcy. And so he runs the recruiting, he interviews everybody. And we look for, obviously like the military, very focused on the military, then the integrity, and we want to find people who have been successful throughout their lives, that have worked hard and want to be winners and have ambition, and then skill set. Then you get into skills, technical skills, accounting, IT, et cetera. But it's the integrity is the first. And then you're not going to make it if you've got obviously criminal issues, drug issues, anything like that, that we're not going to bring people on board. Now, if you come on board and end up with a drug or alcohol issue, we're going to spend a lot of time to take care of you, and we're going to get you back on your feet. But we don't take a high risk coming in if you've had that kind of in your background. And we're not a labor-intensive operation. So we can really take our time and hire really special people, put a lot into them, and then the goal is that they're with us for decades.
You've spoken about military leadership and civilian leadership. Can you speak a little bit about family leadership, and is that a different style of leadership that you find?
Every leadership scenario has got a different style. And you learn quickly in a family. I'm a Christian. And so as my father told me that I got married to Sarah, he goes, look, it's going to work if you agree with her 99% of the time. So I agree with Sarah 99% of the time, but I am head of the household. And you have to have a head of a household. And so when it comes to a critical decision, I will make that decision, and I expect the family to follow me if I make that decision. But I assure you, as the Admiral said, there's a lot of listening. There's a lot of, before you make that command decision in a family, you better really know what you're doing. And in the military and in business, you can, most of the time you have time and you can help build a consensus on a decision. But if you're the leader and if it's an emergency and you've got to make a command decision, you make that command decision. You don't wait, because people need quick direction. Certainly, if you look at the disasters he's worked with, you need quick, fast decisions. And then once you make that decision, you tell people why you did it and bring them along, and then expect everybody to do everything they can to make that decision work. But also, you've got to be open-minded. You've got to be humble. And if you've made a wrong decision, you expect your teammates to tell you. And if they say it's wrong, you need to listen. That's it. To kind of helping the family.
Yes, sir.
At the end of the day, they'll agree with my wife most of the time. So
All the way in the back.
that's a lesson learned.
You might have to speak up, but
Admiral, got a question for you. I'm from Asheville, North Carolina, and so it's more of a personal question, but with the disasters that we've seen in North Carolina and California, with the fires and the floods and whatnot, what advice would you give to those community leaders to bring a cohesiveness about, you've got a lot of folks that really want to help, like you said before, it's not for lack of people desiring to help, but how do you create a cohesive unit to really give the folks there what they need? And it's a lot of folks that, have lost everything. What advice would you give them?
I think the challenge that most Americans have is they have no idea what the families are going through in Asheville, for example. Until the cameras get on spot and families start to tell their story. What I have learned in Dallas is a great example, as Ross reminds us. People are actually very, very generous once they understand the problems that you're up against. And without sounding too prescriptive, I just think more people need to know the story, and it needs to be told by more people, particularly where there's need. When people sense that there's a genuine need, they will come. I have found that to be the case in Pleasant Grove. The area where I work today was intentionally placed there. It was intentionally placed there because the median income is $33,000 and average home value is $75,000. Half the population doesn't have a high school diploma. It's a great place for a muffler or a hubcap. That's the future unless we do something really, really different. And although I've pivoted on you, I'll come back to Asheville. The point I'm making is that all of our students, all 495 students, are going to college in a place that is invisible as far as zip codes are concerned to most. And they're getting 8 or 9 offers. And the reason they're doing so well is because we have these unusual relationships that have become routinely possible. We partner with 131 different businesses in Dallas, and our students go to work. And when they go to work, they're building a resume in addition to building a college prep transcript. And you put those two together in the mind of an 18-year-old who now presents himself with 4 years of experience working at Goldman Sachs. He gets college offers. And those relationships have made it all possible. For some reason, and I don't really understand the dynamics of why, we had this problem in New Orleans with Katrina. We had this problem in Asheville. We've had this problem in other parts of the country where the moment lasts far too short, the impact lasts far too long, and most of the country has found a way to move on without being forced to focus. What we have learned is the power of relationships and nurturing those relationships. I think we have to tell our story in order to keep those relationships alive. My counsel would be, let's find a way to tell the story of what's going on in Asheville so that more people can be aware and we can appeal to their better angels so that they can provide the support that I know they would want to give. And it's a sad story, but it's a story that needs to be told.
Ross, I have a question for you. Long time ago, when I was a young orthodontist in Cedar Hill, I had the privilege to give the award to the Eagle Scouts because they find out I was an Eagle Scout. And when I gave those awards, there was I don't remember, it was a medal or a plate that your father gave to every one of the fathers as an Eagle Scout, where he honored the parents of the Eagle Scout. So I don't memorize what it was, but later on in a restaurant, I have the opportunity to have lunch with your dad in one of the little restaurants around Cedar Hill. He was by himself, and I approached him. And he didn't want to talk to me at first, and I started talking. I was more and he said, I have a question for you. Why do you give those awards to the parents? Said, because everyone in America has to be an Eagle Scout. That should be great kids for America. So I have that experience.
And Boy Scouts are a great leadership laboratory. And the Eagle Scout we have a great Boy Scout program in St. Mark's. And we've been big supporters of Eagle Scouts. And so my father supported the Eagle Scouts on the Dallas side of town. And then when he passed away, I picked up the Dallas side and the Fort Worth side. So all Eagle Scouts in North Texas will get a letter from me continuing my father's tradition, just to thank them for what they've done. And that's where your future leaders are going to be, those Eagle Scouts. It's amazing where the Eagle Scouts end up. My boys kept saying, why do I have to be an Eagle Scout? I said, why do I need to do it? I said, well, you have to do it. And so now we're at the Explorers Club in New York. And they start off with everybody that walked on the moon stand up. All the astronauts stand up. Anybody flown in space stand up. Anybody that's been in the military stand up. Then they said, would all the Eagle Scouts stand up? And my two boys got to stand up with all these great American heroes, and we sat down and they looked at me and they go, we got it. Now we got it. I said, you're in a special, rare group that early in your life. And we love to hire Eagle Scouts, Malone, so we look for Eagle Scouts. But you're in a special group, and that's why my father supported, and that's why we continue that support. Carlos, thank you.
It's a great story of leadership.
It's a great, well, it is. I mean,
I think we're about out of time, but let's take one more question.
I appreciate what you said about the Eagle Scouts. I'm one of those rare Eagles as well. I had a question from a general leadership perspective. What do you think are the best ways to earn respect and build trust and foster support, say in a newfound venture, from just a general leadership perspective?
I think make sure everybody knows your values, and then you got to live your values. And don't pretend to be somebody that you're not. If you're a real jerk, they're going to know it. Don't pretend you're a good guy. All right? And so we see that in society. But then, if you want to act like you're a good person, then you need to make sure you live those values. And then you're going to see the culture. If you're the leader, that culture will start to adopt your values. So make sure the values that you're living are the real values of who you are, because quickly people are going to see that it's not, you're a fraud if you're not careful. Admiral.
I would add that the messaging that comes from leaders that have value is clear, it's concise, and it's consistent. So it becomes principled decision-making. And the more consistent you are, the more your team can anticipate how you will react. When you do that, you build a machine that can function without you. And you can see how your guidance and the example that you live now percolates throughout the organization. The amazing story about leadership is the impact that one person can have on the entire group. You don't realize it until you get a chance to sit in that seat and then experience it yourself. And it's something that you'll value for the rest of your life.
Well, I think we are about out of time. Ross, Pat, I can't thank you enough for being here. The lessons, stories, all tremendously insightful, valuable, and thank you for being here for the Compass School. Thank you all for coming here. We've got a big task ahead of us. We were talking about it a little bit, and we were recounting the history of schools going back to St. Mark's and Hockaday and ESD and Jesuit and when they got formed. And that's a little bit what Compass feels like right now.
Yeah, I'd love to say something. I mean, we need this school in Dallas-Fort Worth. And you look at our growth, and as I was working on this talk, I had to do a little research, Arnie. St. Mark's, the beginning of St. Mark's was 1903, and there's 70,000 people in town. And Mr. Terrell, founder of St. Mark's, was the one that convinced Miss Hockaday to come and start Hockaday. So where would we be without the St. Mark's Hockaday? And then the Green Hill, and then the ESD. Compass is following along in a great tradition, and there's such a demand. Our private schools are full. I think St. Mark's is 15% acceptance. So only one, that's the acceptance rate of St. Mark's. Hockaday is probably the same. Arnie would know. You've got incredible, young men and women that need phenomenal educations, and Compass is going to be, it's needed. It's going to continue to add to the growth of the region. We have 8 million people in North Texas today. We had 1 million every 7 years. The city of Dallas, just the Goldman Sachs partners alone could probably fill the school up. And the amount of, so the Goldman talent's incredible, but now that Goldman's here and NASDAQ is here, New York Stock Exchange is here, Texas Stock Exchange is here, every major financial institution in North America is now trying to get a branch in Dallas. In uptown, downtown Dallas. So the demand is going to be phenomenal. And so, Peter, the leaders, the founders, who's the founder? The founder, congratulations. You had wonderful vision. And it's going to be, it's needed, and thank all of you supporting Compass.
Yeah. As chair of the Capital Campaign, that was completely unscripted, but Ross, thank you.
I know the drill. I've been in your seat, so I know what you need. How about that?
Again,
and it's true. It's very true.
I can't thank you all enough, both of you, for joining us. Thank you all for attending. And I think we've got a reception upstairs after this, although I guess, Katie,
well, thank you. Thank you. Well done. Thank you. I would love to welcome Arnie Holtberg. Just to close us out, I promise he won't give a dissertation. Yes, you can do that.
Thank you very much. One of our catchphrases at Compass School of Texas, for which I serve as strategic advisor, very fancy title for ask a question, I'll answer it. If I get the right answer, we don't know. But I joined this organization because from the get-go, from when the founders approached me, I felt absolutely congruent with the philosophy and the mission of the school. This is not only a school that is needed, but as I told them, our founders, there's always room for excellence. And our excellence is defined by a phrase, true north, because we are heading true north. We are heading in the right direction every minute of every day. Now, the ancient Greeks had a phrase that's akin to that, arete. Some of you may be familiar with that. It is excellence, philosophically, ethically, intellectually. That's what we're about. Excellence, 24 hours a day, period. We are going to deliver for our girls and boys what they need to become strong leaders, strong women and men to do the right things in this world of ours. So I'm very proud to be part of this organization. I can guarantee you that. I wake up at 3 in the morning with new ideas, which they hate. That's okay. That's an old plague I've suffered from. And Peter, thank you very much. I think I'm going to call the mayor of New York City and suggest you direct traffic in Times Square, because you're one heck of a traffic director. Thank you for being here today. And Linda, thank you. Thank you for opening your arms to us. Thank you for being a partner with schools for the children of this part of America. You provide arete every hour of every day, we know. And Katie, you've had some 3 o'clock moments lately, making sure this event came off flawlessly. Thank you very much for your leadership. Appreciate it. I think one one concept or principle that may not have been covered adequately today is your dad, Ross. I knew him as a school grandparent. Why are you laughing? Big Ross, I called him Big Ross, but a conversation between Holberg and Perot went something like this. Mr. Holberg, Mr. Perot, Mr. Holberg, Mr. Perot, because your dad never called me anything but Mr. Holberg. He showed infinite respect for me as the head of his grandson's school. And I never missed that. Respect was at the core of Ross Perot Sr.'s being, period, as it is for all of you in your family. So I appreciate that. He's a role model for me every day of my life. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. And Ross, back in 2005, when Ross was president of the Board of Trustees at St. Mark's School of Texas, and we were having our normal monthly meeting.
Just the two of us. It's a very special relationship. President, they had good
Just us guys.
code of silence, yep.
And we went through the drill, enrollment, budget, yada, yada, all the nuts and bolts of school life. And Ross invariably, at the end of every one of those meetings, would say, okay, Arnie, what's really on your mind? And we had gotten to a point where we had always done a wonderful job of creating leaders. The evidence is all over Dallas, America, and the world, frankly. And I'm proud of that. I hope I'm not haughty and arrogant about that, but I'm very proud of it. I said, well, Ross, we've done a terrific job of educating leaders in this school. We could go back to Mr. Terrell and list out the names. And look, here, you're in front of me. Another example of great leadership. I said, but I don't feel like we're doing an adequate job. We're doing an excellent job, but it's not an adequate job because the leaders are leading, but the last kid in every class needs to learn to lead too. And I don't think we're doing our job for every child. We need to do it better. And I was fervent. I was really wound up. And so Mr. Perot leaned in and said, Arnie, what are you gonna do about it? That's leadership. He called the question, and now we've got a program that is actually internationally known.
One of the best leadership programs in the country. But also, I mean, Arnie and I were talking about, the issue was we had great business leaders, lawyers, doctors, Wall Street, on and on and on. But I said, Arnie, how come there's not enough people serving the country, and where are political leaders? And so that's why we started sending this leadership program. And now almost every St. Mark's class has one or two boys at a military academy.
Terrific.
And I think it's because of the program you put in place.
Four 2 years ago, but that's another story.
But that's how we got that sense of service embedded in the school through leadership to where they're now going to help serve the nation.
Well, and I told Pat before the program began that Friday night at the annual alumni dinner, the gentleman who won the Lee Smith Courage and Honor Award, which is the top award given to an alumnus of the school now, is West Point, and he's a colonel in the major, in the United States Army, and he's being deployed back to Washington, D.C. to help provide our country with leadership. We've had more than enough excellence to last a lifetime tonight, or maybe not. But last year I was interviewed, and the interviewer asked me a question. How do I define a good leader? And I think we've had it defined. Listen to this. My response was unhesitating. A leader is honest, has integrity, strives fervently to achieve what he says he intends to, never blames anyone else for his failures, always accepts responsibility for his own behavior, does not write his own press notices, prepares for tomorrow better than he prepared for today, and always puts the well-being of the whole of his own desires. Thank you, gentlemen, for exemplifying.